Over the next several days, we are going to be learning about light and sound, two very important forms of energy, as well as humans produce sound with their voices. We are going to be hearing a narrative with several characters who discuss the characteristics of light, sound, and voice. Remember, a narrative is a fictional story like The Wind in the Willows that we heard previously at the beginning of the school year. Good morning, my friend, said a smiling Mr. Samuel Van Lumen. It is good to see you. I see you are already working, replied Mr. Jack Gaudier, as he pushed the creaky garden gate. What are you painting today? Well, I am painting the roses that have just begun to bloom, replied Samuel. I am taking advantage of the early morning sunlight. As you know, my eyes are not what they used to be. Sadly, I can only paint for about an hour each day. You will have to speak up, Samuel. I am a little hard of hearing, you know, said Jack with a laugh. The characters, Jack and Samuel, are each experiencing the loss of one of their senses. Who can name some tools that can help people to see or hear better? Some examples would be eyeglasses. Eyeglasses are a tool to help Samuel see better, and later you will hear about a tool that will help Jack to hear better. How about we sit for a while under the old oak tree, replied Samuel. I have just made some lemonade. I am hot standing in the sunlight, and my eyes are tired. Samuel and Jack walked slowly toward the shade of the giant oak and settled themselves into two comfortable garden chairs. Samuel picked up a pitcher of ice-cold lemonade and poured it into two sparkling glasses. Both men were silent for a long while, until at last Samuel spoke. I have been pondering life, said Samuel, speaking loudly so that Jack could hear him. I have such wonderful memories, and you are in so many of them. I am glad to hear that, said Jack. Now that your eyes and my ears are failing, we should strike a deal. I'll be your eyes if you will be my ears, Jack exclaimed rather loudly. Do you think Jack is being literal or figurative when he says he will be Samuel's eyes if Samuel will be his ears? And what does he actually mean when he does say this? The two men laughed. At that precise moment, Samuel's dog, Alfie, came to join them. Alfie stretched and yawned and then curled up in the shade between the two friends. Tell me, said Jack, what is the painter's most valued tool? Light, shouted Samuel. Let me tell you why light is so extraordinary. Samuel lifted himself out of his garden chair and stood beneath the giant oak. As he stood, he gazed out into his beautiful garden that was bursting with color and scent and began to speak. Our main source of light and heat is the sun. It is a hot star of glowing gas. Samuel smiled as he went on. Light illuminates objects and makes them visible. Light spreads out in all directions. Because of light, our eyes and our brains are able to form pictures of the world that we live in. I have spent my life painting those pictures. Light gives us every sunrise, every sunset, and without light, there is only darkness. Jack stared up into the sky. I've always wondered how exactly light reaches us here on Earth. The sun is more than 92 million miles away. Samuel nodded. It is difficult to comprehend how it takes a mere 8 minutes for the light from the sun to reach us here on Earth. It really is an extraordinary that the light can travel 92 million miles in 8 minutes. That would be like circling the Earth almost 4,000 times in 8 minutes. Light travels in the form of tiny waves called light waves, explained Samuel. These light waves travel in straight paths called rays. Rays of light waves travel at the fastest speed possible in a vacuum, a place that has no tiny particles or bits of matter. Because most of outer space has very few particles, it is a vacuum, and light travels there at a remarkable speed of approximately 186,000 miles a second. Jack sat, shaking his head, and then took a sip of the refreshingly cool lemonade. That is a lot to think about, he admitted. It sure is, agreed Samuel, smiling. Scientists are still studying and learning many new things about light, including in special situations. Light can act like a stream instead of a wave. Jack shook his head. Figuring out how light works must be complicated, but it is indeed fascinating. Samuel nodded. Light from the sun reaches Earth because it can pass so quickly through outer space. There is almost nothing to block its path. Once light reaches Earth's atmosphere, it slows down a little bit. The atmosphere is like a blanket of air full of gases and moisture that covers the Earth. This blanket of air slows the light down. Then, Samuel continued, the speed of light slows down even more because objects start getting in the way of the light's rays. Samuel pointed to the lemonade. For example, rays of light waves move more slowly when traveling through liquids, such as this lemonade. Then Samuel pointed to the oak tree. Light waves cannot pass through other objects, such as this beautiful oak tree. Because rays of light waves travel in a straight line, they cannot bend around the tree either. Instead, they leave a shadow or shade on the other side of it. I like Alfie. Am enjoying sitting in the cool shade where this is clearly less light and heat, pronounced Jack as he just sipped on his lemonade. At this precise moment, as if he heard his name, Alfie leapt out from underneath Samuel's chair and jumped high into the air in pursuit of a buzzing bumblebee. Both men stopped talking to watch the dog frantically attempt to capture the bee. The bee seemed to float away on the warm summer breeze, no doubt in search of a sweet, scented flower to go and pollinate. Another important thing to remember is light is fuel for our planet, announced Samuel. Light is energy. Energy from the sun supports all forms of life on this planet. And without light and heat from the sun, the farmer would not have any food to harvest. In fact, we could not even exist here on Earth. Speaking of food, exclaimed Jack. Yes, indeed, said Samuel. I think I have exhausted both of us, and it is almost time for lunch. What do you say we go into the kitchen and get something to eat? I say that's the best thing I've heard all day, laughed Jack, and I smell something delicious coming from inside the house. Two men made their way into the coolness of the kitchen and prepared themselves a lunch of homemade zucchini bread and fresh fruits and vegetables, gathered from Samuel's garden. They sat at a table next to the kitchen window and talked about old times as they ate their meal. They recalled how they first became friends in elementary school. They had been in the same third grade class together, and they had both been baseball players. They had gone to high school together and then on to the same college where Samuel studied art and Jack studied music. They had even been soldiers together in the war. Eventually, Sam and Jack had both been married and had children, and their wives became good friends, and their children grew up playing with each other. Sadly, both of their wives have died, but their children were now adults with children of their own. Jack and Samuel are loyal friends. What other characters have we heard about in our read-alouds who you can think of that were loyal to each other? Before they knew it, several hours had passed and the bright sun had set. Samuel and Jack were now sitting on the porch in the shimmering twilight. Sounds of various night creatures were beginning to echo in the still of the evening. It won't be long before the stars are twinkling in the night sky and the moon is shining brightly, said Jack. It is almost time for me to go. Samuel gazed silently at the emerging night sky, and they sat together enjoying the cooler evening air. And eventually, Samuel spoke. Isn't it amazing that the stars make their own light, but the moon does not? Sunlight bounces off of the moon to make it look like it's shining brightly in the night sky, mused Samuel. Of course, I could sit here all night and talk about why light is so important, not only for myself as a painter, but for our very existence, he said. That's a fact, replied Jack, smiling at his friend. Samuel smiled too. Jack, how about we go fishing tomorrow morning? Asked Samuel. Sounds good to me, said Jack as he stood up to go. As you know, I am the better fisherman. It will be a miracle, Samuel Van Lumen, if you can catch a single fish. We'll see about that, exclaimed Samuel as he watched his best friend walk slowly down the garden path and through the creaky garden gate and into the night sky.